Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me for my TED Talk today. Now, those of you who have seen my rant video know that I take personal offense to shallow talking, especially when it's outside my doorstep. However, today I thought I was going to expand a little bit more on that and take a look at child poverty and try to get to the heart of the problem. Now, before I talk to you about all that, I want to talk to you a little bit about my research. I found lots of graphs, statistics, whatever you might have. However, I felt like I was missing something. I like the human element of this whole thing. So I started to look at some news stories and found some very interesting ones from the Toronto Press. One I want to share with you guys is the story of Desron. Now, the story of Desron is covered by Adriana Gunray, who is one of the directors of the Eves Institute for Homeless Youth in Toronto. But I've said too much already. I'm just going to read her account of Desron straight from the source. Now, Gunray states, Desron is an awesome person. What I really appreciate about Desron's story is that it shows how immigration can be a very difficult experience for a family. Desron's mother left him behind in St. Vincent when she immigrated to Canada. She hoped to earn enough to build a new home and a new life for both of them in a new country. But by the time she was able to bring him over, he was already 15 years old. Gunray says the mother and son had grown apart in their formative years, and reunification was bad for both of them. They didn't get along. They fought. They have grown apart. He said that things got really bad, so he decided to leave because he was stressing out his mother to the point where he could not stand it any longer. He said, I want to stay in school, but I don't know how I'm going to do that if I'm fighting with my mother or if I'm homeless. New to the country, Desron had never heard of a youth shelter. With some research, he came across Eve's Place in North York, an emergency shelter and the original Eve's facility. Most youths stay for up to 3 months, but Desron, he stayed for a year. He decided to get all the support he could. He kept talking to people, kept communicating, speaking to every counselor, every housing worker, every program support worker he could find. Gunray says, he realized the lack of communication between him and his mother is what led to their initial breakdown. Desron's story refutes one of the most stubborn myths about homeless youth. They are lazy, irresponsible, or unmotivated. People have stereotyped young people as being lazy, Gunray says. Their laziness or their partying has led them to homelessness, and their unmotivation keeps them there. Now, this is just not true. What we see is that family conflict is a big reason, and those conflicts are often rooted in things like financial troubles, mental health, or even substance abuse. And when you are 18 or 19 years old, you need a lot of support from people around you, loving and caring people to be able to step you into a brighter future. And that's no different from young people who are experiencing homelessness. With the support of Eve's services as a stand-in family, Desron was able to finish high school, apply to university, and pursue a career in the field of arts. The young man discovered he had a talent for dancing, acting, modeling, and above all, photography. He now speaks at Eve's events that highlight some of the bright futures the organization has helped create. Now, I really enjoyed this story for some key reasons. A lot of people see homelessness as a result of personal flaw in the individual. The kid didn't work hard enough, or they hung out with the wrong crowd. They got addicted to drugs or alcohol and made wrong choices with their life. Now, this kind of ideology is very close to deficit ideology, which is a term that I have just become aware of by doing this research. Deficit ideology puts the focus on the individual and makes their poverty their fault. It blames them for it. Now, I personally don't like deficit theory, as I believe it's fundamentally flawed. I put this next to another theory that I recently learned about called structural theory. Now, structural theory does not make the individual the bad guy in the situation, but rather looks at poverty from the point of society. Now, Desron's mom could not bring him from St. Vincent when she moved because of a lack of resources, moving to a new country. This is a structural problem, as Canadian society did not have an outlet available to help Desron's mother with her son, and so her son was left behind. This causes a fundamental division. between the two and made it much more likely that Desron would become homeless. I just thank God for Eve's services to pick up the pieces where society had left them, because if not for them, Desron would be worse off, and we as a society would be worse off without his contributions to it. This really gets me to think about the potential of all students and what society tethers from them. Whether it be racial inequality, a harsh family life, mental illness, or all those things combined, poverty is not the kid's fault. How Desrons have lost due to the system of oppression we have built around ourselves. Because of this reason, I think that programs that help break down these structures and allow people like Desmond and other kids to reach their potential are very important. Now, Desron found help with EVA, which once again is a shelter program, but we can look at other programs that help kids like Desron as well. Now, I talked about child hunger, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Breakfast Club of Canada as another organization. Now, the Breakfast Club of Canada has given food plans for 243,521 children a day. Other programs that try to help those kids in need, not just in Canada, but internationally, are AmeriCorps, the Ontario Justice Education Network, and Action for Education. A lot of these groups are non-governmental organizations, NGOs are required charitable donations to continue their work in Canada and across the globe. Now, I also want to touch on what we as teachers can do to help this problem. Now, if you notice one of your students is struggling with poverty or is having trouble in their class due to a personal issue, simply talk to them about it. See if they want help and become aware of programs in your community that can help them. Offer resources to them, but make sure that you know what you're talking about. Because if you offer them the wrong resource, you might just make it worse. Donate to your local food bank, or any NGOs you feel your student might need one day. Just simply act in loco parentis, because some of these kids might not have anyone else to turn to but you. Now, I'm going to leave you with one last story, a personal story, about my time working for Action for Education in Chios, Greece. Now, as I worked there, I had the pleasure of meeting many young, talented men who had been left their friends, family, and country behind due to war. One of my students was named Amin, and he was from Iran. Now, Amin was 17 years old and was the last person in his family to have left Iran for Europe. Amin is a fitness nut and loved running, working out, and wants to be a personal trainer. Amin is also one of the funniest people I have ever met and is a natural-born leader. But for no apparent reason, Amin had been denied his refugee status in Europe twice already. And even though his mother and sister were living in the UK, his prospects were not looking great. When I left Chios, Amin had one more appeal, and if it failed, he would be forced to go back to Iran, where he has no family or friends left to stay with. Now, as terrible as Amin's situation is, I know that if he gets his refugee status and is reunited with his family, he does not have a high school degree, or really any resources to speak of. And his dream of becoming a personal trainer is going to be a struggle. In fact, everything in his life is going to be a struggle, even if he is with his family in the UK. That's why it is important for us as teachers to know where our students are coming from and what struggles they might have to face in their lives. Child poverty is an issue that not only affects children across the world, but across your desk as a teacher. And educating your students and yourself is the first important step to help alleviate some of these problems. So next time you see one of your students struggling with poverty, think about all the structural oppression that brought them there. And listen to what they need to succeed. Because at the end of the day, their success means our success as a society. Thank you so much for listening to my TED Talk. Have a good day.